My stepbrother hacked my Facebook account to make me look evil after grandmother left me more money in her will. Dad believed his lies and cut me off completely until stepbrother got arrested for credit card fraud. I, 29M, need to get this off my chest because I don't know what else to do. My relationship with my dad Tom, 58M, is completely destroyed because of lies my stepbrother Kevin, 26M, told about me. This whole mess started when my grandmother passed away 6 months ago. My parents divorced when I was 8. My mom Rebecca, 55F, left my dad because he had a serious gambling problem. She never told me this growing up. All I knew was that one day she packed our bags and we moved in with her friend Janet. Mom always said she and dad just weren't compatible anymore and that sometimes marriages don't work out. Dad got his life together after the divorce. He quit gambling, got a steady job at an insurance company, and worked hard to be a good father. He picked me up every weekend and we'd go fishing or to baseball games. He never missed a birthday or school event. I respected him for turning his life around. When I was 12, Dad married Linda, 52F. She had a son Kevin from her previous marriage. Kevin's biological father died in a car accident when he was 5, so Linda raised him alone until she met my dad. Dad legally adopted Kevin when they got married. At first, Kevin and I got along fine. We'd play video games together during my weekend visits and he seemed like a decent kid. But as we got older, I started noticing things about him. He would lie about small stuff constantly. Like he'd eat the last piece of pizza and swear he didn't touch it. Or he'd break something and blame it on the cat. The first major incident happened when I was 15. I had saved up money from my part-time job to buy a vintage guitar. I kept it at Dad's house because Mom's apartment was too small. One weekend, I found the guitar with a huge crack down the front. Kevin claimed he had no idea what happened. Dad believed him and said maybe I had damaged it myself and forgotten. I knew Kevin had done it, but I couldn't prove anything. Things got worse in college. I went to a state school and lived in the dorms. Kevin went to a community college and lived at home with Dad and Linda. Every time I came home for breaks, Kevin would tell Dad stories about how I was partying too much or failing classes. None of it was true. I was on the dean's list and barely drank. But Dad would lecture me about responsibility and making good choices. Kevin also started spreading rumors about me to our extended family. He told our Aunt Sarah that I had gotten arrested for drunk driving. He told our cousin Mike that I was doing drugs. When family members would ask me about these things, I'd deny them, but Kevin had already planted the seeds of doubt. After college, I moved to Chicago for work. Kevin stayed in our hometown and got a job at a local bank. He lived with Dad and Linda to save money. This gave him constant access to Dad's ear. He would call me sometimes just to gloat about family dinners I was missing or trips they were taking together. The real trouble started when my grandmother on Dad's side got sick last year. Grandma Rose, 82F, had always been close to me. She taught me how to cook her famous apple pie and would send me care packages when I was in college. She lived in a retirement home about an hour from Dad's house. Kevin started visiting Grandma regularly when she got sick. He would drive her to doctor appointments and bring her groceries. On the surface, this seemed nice. But I noticed he always made sure to mention his visits to other family members. He'd post photos on social media of himself with Grandma, talking about what a blessing it was to spend time with her. I visited Grandma when I could, but it was harder for me since I lived further away and had a demanding job. I'd drive down most weekends and spend Saturday with her. We'd watch old movies and I'd help her with crossword puzzles. She seemed happy to see me, but I could tell she was getting confused sometimes. 6 months ago, Grandma fell and broke her hip. She died 2 weeks later from complications. The funeral was hard on everyone. Dad was devastated because Grandma had basically raised him after his own parents died young. A week after the funeral, Dad called me about Grandma's will. She had left her house and most of her savings to Dad, which made sense since he was her only child. But she had also left specific items to me and Kevin. I got her recipe collection and her wedding china. Kevin got her car and some jewelry. The problem was the amount of cash she left us. Grandma had saved about $50,000 over the years. According to the will, she left $35,000 to me and $15,000 to Kevin. Dad explained that Grandma had talked to him about this decision. She felt that Kevin already had a stable home with Dad and Linda, while I was on my own and might need more help getting established. Kevin didn't say much at the time, but I could see he wasn't happy about the split. He kept asking Dad if he was sure the will was correct. Dad showed him the paperwork multiple times. 2 weeks later, Dad called me at work. He sounded furious. He asked me how I could be so cruel and heartless. I had no idea what he was talking about. He told me to check my Facebook page. I logged in and found a post on my timeline that I definitely didn't write. It was a long rant about how Grandma had always favored me over Kevin and how I had manipulated her into leaving me more money. The post said I had convinced Grandma that Kevin didn't really love her and was only visiting for the inheritance. It ended with me saying I was glad Kevin got less money because he didn't deserve it anyway. I immediately called Dad back and told him I didn't write that post. Someone had hacked my account. But Dad wouldn't listen. He said the post contained details about private family conversations that only I would know. He said I was lying and trying to cover up what I had done. I spent the next 2 hours on the phone with Facebook trying to figure out how someone could have posted from my account. They said there was no evidence of hacking. The post had been made from my usual device and location, which made no sense. Dad called me 3 more times that day, each time getting angrier. He said family members were sharing the post and calling him to ask about it. Our Aunt Sarah had called Linda crying because she couldn't believe I would say such horrible things about Kevin. I drove down to Dad's house that weekend to talk to him in person. Kevin was there too, and he looked upset. He said he couldn't believe I would write those things about him after everything we'd been through as brothers. He said he had always looked up to me and thought we were close. Dad told me I needed to apologize to Kevin and make a public post explaining that I had lied about Grandma's will. He said if I didn't do this, he would never speak to me again. I refused because I hadn't done anything wrong. Linda tried to mediate, but Dad was too angry to listen. He said I had embarrassed the family and hurt Kevin's feelings. He said he was disappointed in the man I had become and that Grandma would be ashamed of me. I left without apologizing. The next day, Dad sent me a text saying he was removing me from his will and didn't want me at family gatherings anymore. He said I could keep Grandma's inheritance, but I was no longer welcome in his house. That was 4 months ago. I've tried calling Dad several times, but he won't answer. Linda answers sometimes and says she's sorry, but Dad is too hurt to talk to me. She says Kevin has been really depressed about the whole situation and feels like he lost a brother. I hired a computer expert to look at my Facebook account. He found evidence that someone had logged in from a different device 2 weeks before the post was made. The login came from an IP address in our hometown. I sent this information to Dad, but he said I probably paid someone to fake the evidence. My mom has been supportive through all of this. She says Dad has always been stubborn and that he'll eventually come around. But I'm starting to think this might be permanent. I've been thinking about confronting Kevin directly, but I don't have proof that he made the post. All I have is circumstantial evidence and a gut feeling. Dad clearly believes Kevin over me, and I don't think anything I say will change his mind. I'm supposed to receive Grandma's inheritance next month when the estate is fully settled. Part of me wants to give Kevin half of it just to try to fix this mess. But another part of me thinks that would be admitting guilt for something I didn't do. I don't know what to do anymore. I've lost my dad and my stepbrother, and I'm not sure how to get them back. The worst part is that Grandma would be heartbroken to see our family torn apart like this. Am I wrong for not apologizing for something I didn't do? Should I just swallow my pride and try to make peace with Kevin? I feel like I'm stuck in a no-win situation. Update 1: I didn't expect to update this post, but something happened that changes everything. A lot of you said I should investigate Kevin more, and it turns out you were right. After my original post, I decided to hire a private investigator. I know that sounds extreme, but I needed to know the truth. The PI specialized in cybercrime and social media investigations. I gave him all the information I had about the Facebook post. The PI found something interesting. Kevin had been using a VPN service to hide his location when accessing the internet. The same VPN service had been used to access my Facebook account. The PI traced the payments for the VPN service back to Kevin's bank account. But that wasn't the biggest discovery. The PI also found that Kevin had been stealing from Dad and Linda for months. He had been taking money from Linda's purse and had figured out how to access Dad's online banking. He'd been transferring small amounts to his own account, usually less than $50 at a time. The PI estimated that Kevin had stolen about $3,000 over 6 months. He was careful to take amounts that wouldn't be noticed right away, but it added up. I sat on this information for 2 weeks trying to decide what to do. I knew Dad wouldn't believe me if I just told him. I needed solid proof. The PI helped me put together a complete report with bank records, VPN logs, and screenshots of Kevin's online activity. We also found that Kevin had been gambling online, which explained why he needed the money. I mailed the report to Dad with a note saying I hoped he would read it with an open mind. I didn't call or try to visit. I just wanted him to see the evidence. Dad called me 3 days later. His voice was shaky and he sounded tired. He said he had read the report and talked to Linda about it. They had confronted Kevin with the evidence. Kevin initially denied everything, but when Dad threatened to call the police, he broke down and confessed. He admitted to stealing the money and to hacking my Facebook account. He said he was angry about Grandma's will and wanted to hurt me. Dad said Kevin also confessed to lying about me throughout college. He had made up the stories about me partying and failing classes because he was jealous that I was away at a 4-year school while he was stuck at community college. The conversation with Dad was awkward. He apologized for not believing me, but he also seemed defensive. He said Kevin had been under a lot of stress and that gambling addiction was a disease. He said Kevin needed help, not punishment. I asked Dad what he planned to do about Kevin stealing from them. Dad said they weren't going to press charges because Kevin was family. He said Kevin had agreed to pay back the money and get help for his gambling problem. Dad invited me to come visit, but I said I needed time to think about everything. I wasn't ready to just pretend like nothing had happened. Dad had chosen to believe Kevin over me for years, and that hurt more than I wanted to admit. Linda called me the next day. She was crying and said she was sorry for not seeing what Kevin was doing. She said she had always thought Kevin was a good kid who just made mistakes sometimes. She said she understood if I didn't want to forgive them right away. Linda also told me something that Dad hadn't mentioned. Kevin had been planning to ask Grandma to change her will before she died. He had been researching how to do it and had even contacted a lawyer about the process. He never went through with it because Grandma died before he could manipulate her. This information made me sick. Kevin had been planning to scam an elderly woman out of her savings. If Grandma had lived longer, he probably would have succeeded. I haven't decided whether to rebuild my relationship with Dad and Linda. Part of me wants to forgive them and move on. But another part of me is still angry about how easily they believed Kevin's lies about me. Kevin moved out of Dad's house after the confrontation. Linda said he's staying with a friend and looking for his own apartment. He sent me a text message apologizing for everything, but it felt fake and forced. He said he was sorry for hurting me and that he hoped we could be brothers again someday. I haven't responded to Kevin's text. I don't think I can ever trust him again. Even if Dad and I work things out, I don't want Kevin in my life. The hardest part is that I feel like I've lost years of my relationship with Dad because of Kevin's lies. Dad missed out on celebrating my college graduation, my first job promotion, and other important moments in my life. We can't get that time back. I'm still processing everything that happened. I'm glad the truth came out, but I'm not sure what comes next. Some of you might think I should just forgive everyone and move on, but it's not that simple. Trust is hard to rebuild once it's broken. Update 2: Things have gotten more complicated since my last update. Dad has been calling me every week trying to rebuild our relationship, but I found out he's been lying to me about Kevin. Dad told me that Kevin had moved out and was getting help for his gambling problem. He said Kevin was in counseling and working to pay back the money he stole. Dad made it sound like Kevin was taking responsibility for his actions. Last month, I ran into my cousin Mike at a restaurant in Chicago. Mike still lives in my hometown and knows everyone in the family. He mentioned that he had seen Kevin at Dad's house the previous weekend. Kevin was helping Dad fix the fence in the backyard. I was confused because Dad had told me Kevin was living with a friend. I asked Mike if he was sure it was Kevin. Mike said he was positive and that Kevin had waved at him from the yard. When Dad called me that week, I asked him about Kevin. Dad said Kevin was doing well and staying out of trouble. He didn't mention that Kevin had been at the house. I decided to test him by asking where Kevin was living. Dad said Kevin had found an apartment across town and was settling in well. I knew Dad was lying to me. I called Linda directly and asked her about Kevin. She seemed nervous and said she didn't want to get in the middle of things between me and Dad. But when I pressed her, she admitted that Kevin had moved back in with them a month ago. Linda said Kevin had been staying with different friends but kept getting kicked out. He couldn't afford his own place because he had lost his job at the bank. They found out about his gambling and fired him. Linda said Dad felt sorry for Kevin and let him come back home. I was furious that Dad had lied to me. I called him immediately and confronted him about it. Dad got defensive and said he didn't think it was important where Kevin lived. He said he was trying to help Kevin get back on his feet. I told Dad that I couldn't trust him if he was going to lie to me about Kevin. Dad said I was being unfair and that Kevin was still his son. He said Kevin had learned his lesson and deserved a second chance. The conversation escalated quickly. Dad accused me of being vindictive and holding grudges. He said I should be happy that the truth had come out and that we could be a family again. He said Kevin had apologized and that should be enough. I told Dad that Kevin hadn't just made a mistake. He had systematically lied about me for years and had stolen money from them. I said Kevin had tried to manipulate a dying old woman out of her inheritance. These weren't small errors in judgment. Dad said I was being dramatic and that Kevin wasn't a bad person. He said Kevin had made poor choices but that he was working to change. Dad said he expected me to forgive Kevin if I wanted to be part of the family again. I told Dad I wouldn't have a relationship with him if it meant pretending that Kevin hadn't done anything wrong. Dad said I was forcing him to choose between his sons and that wasn't fair. I said he had already chosen Kevin over me multiple times. We haven't spoken since the conversation 3 weeks ago. Linda has called me twice to try to mediate, but I told her I was done with the whole situation. She said Dad was just trying to help Kevin and that I should understand his position. I found out from Mike that Kevin is back to his old tricks. He's been telling people in town that I'm the one who refuses to forgive him. He's painting himself as the victim who made a few mistakes and is now being punished by his cruel stepbrother. Kevin has also been posting on social media about family and forgiveness. He shared a quote about how real families stick together through tough times. He posted a photo of him and Dad at a baseball game with a caption about being grateful for unconditional love. These posts make me sick because Kevin is still manipulating people. He's using social media to control the narrative, just like he did when he hacked my Facebook account. Dad doesn't see it because he wants to believe Kevin has changed. I received my inheritance from Grandma's estate last month. The full $35,000. I thought about giving some of it to Kevin like I mentioned in my original post, but I've decided to keep it all. Grandma wanted me to have this money, and I'm not going to let Kevin's manipulation change that. I'm planning to use the money to buy a house in Chicago. I've been renting an apartment, but I want to put down roots somewhere far from my hometown drama. The house will be a fresh start for me. My mom has been supportive through all of this. She said Dad always had a blind spot when it came to seeing the truth about people. She said he ignored Dad's gambling problem for years before she finally left. She said some people don't learn from their mistakes. I'm starting to think that Dad and I might never have a real relationship again. He's shown me that he'll always choose Kevin over me when it comes down to it. I can't build a relationship with someone who refuses to see the truth about Kevin. The saddest part is that I think Grandma would be disappointed in how this turned out. She wanted her inheritance to help me start my life, but instead it's become another source of conflict in our broken family. Update 3. This will be my final update because I've made my decision about Dad and Kevin. A lot has happened in the past 2 months that confirmed I was right to walk away from this toxic situation. 3 weeks ago, Linda called me crying. She said Kevin had been arrested for credit card fraud. He had been working at a retail store and had been copying customer credit card information. He used the stolen information to make online purchases that he then sold for cash. Linda said the police found evidence that Kevin had been doing this for months. They estimated he had stolen about $15,000 from various customers. The store had been investigating missing inventory and discovered Kevin's scheme. Dad posted bail for Kevin, which cost him $5,000. Linda said Dad was devastated because he thought Kevin had changed. She said Dad kept saying he didn't understand how Kevin could do this after everything they had been through. I didn't feel sorry for Dad at all. This was exactly what I had been trying to warn him about. Kevin was a criminal who had been escalating his illegal behavior for years. Dad had chosen to ignore the warning signs and enable Kevin instead of holding him accountable. Linda asked me to call Dad because she said he needed support from his family. I told her that Kevin was the one who had destroyed our family and that Dad had chosen to protect Kevin instead of believing me. I said Dad would have to deal with the consequences of his choices. 2 days later, Dad called me himself. He sounded broken and exhausted. He said he had been wrong about Kevin and that he should have listened to me. He said he was sorry for not believing me and for lying about Kevin living with them. Dad said he finally understood that Kevin was a manipulator who had been using him. He said Kevin had been stealing from customers while pretending to be a reformed person at home. Dad said he felt like a fool for falling for Kevin's lies. I listened to Dad's apology, but I didn't forgive him. I told him that his apology was too little and too late. I said he had spent years believing Kevin's lies about me and had kicked me out of the family over a Facebook post that I didn't write. Dad said he wanted to make things right between us. He said he had learned his lesson and would never doubt me again. He said Kevin was out of their lives for good and that we could start over as father and son. I told Dad that I didn't want to start over. I said he had shown me his true character when he chose to believe Kevin over me. I said I couldn't trust him to have my back when things got difficult. Dad got upset and said I was being unfair. He said people make mistakes and that I should give him a chance to prove he had changed. He said Kevin had fooled him but that he would never let that happen again. I told Dad that this wasn't about Kevin fooling him. This was about Dad's willingness to believe the worst about me without any real evidence. I said he had been eager to think I was capable of writing cruel things about Kevin on social media. Dad said he had been hurt and confused when he saw that Facebook post. He said it contained private information that made him think I had written it. He said he reacted emotionally instead of thinking clearly. I told Dad that a real father would have given me the benefit of the doubt. A real father would have investigated before cutting off his son. I said Dad had been looking for reasons to believe Kevin over me for years. The conversation ended with Dad begging me to reconsider. He said he loved me and that losing me was the worst thing that had ever happened to him. He said he would do anything to earn back my trust. I told Dad that some things couldn't be fixed. I said he had made his choice when he kicked me out of the family, and I was making mine by walking away permanently. I said I hoped he would be happy with Kevin since that's who he had chosen. I hung up and blocked Dad's number. I also blocked Linda's number because I knew she would try to call me on Dad's behalf. I changed my address and didn't give them my new information. Kevin was sentenced to 18 months in prison last week. Linda found my work email address and sent me a message about it. She said Kevin had finally been held accountable for his actions and that maybe now Dad would understand the truth about him. I didn't respond to Linda's email. I don't care what happens to Kevin or Dad anymore. They made their choices and now they have to live with the consequences. I bought a house in Chicago with Grandma's inheritance money. It's a small 2-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood. I've been fixing it up and making it my own. It feels good to have something that belongs completely to me. My mom helped me move into the new house. She said she was proud of me for standing up for myself and not letting Dad manipulate me into coming back. She said Dad had always been weak when it came to confronting difficult truths. I've been thinking about Grandma a lot lately. I think she would be proud of how I used her inheritance to build a life for myself. She always told me to be independent and not let anyone take advantage of me. I don't regret walking away from Dad and Kevin. I spent too many years trying to prove my worth to people who didn't value me. I'm done fighting for relationships with people who don't fight for me. Some people might think I should have given Dad another chance, but I know him too well. He's weak and easily manipulated. He would have found other ways to disappoint me in the future. I'm focusing on building relationships with people who actually care about me. I have good friends in Chicago and a job I enjoy. I'm dating someone who treats me with respect and doesn't make me prove my worth constantly. Dad sends me letters sometimes, but I throw them away without reading them. Linda has tried to friend me on social media, but I blocked her there too. I don't want any connection to that part of my life. This whole experience taught me that family isn't just about blood. It's about people who believe in you and support you when things get tough. Dad and Kevin were never really my family in that sense. I'm building a new life without them, and I'm happier than I've been in years. Sometimes walking away is the only way to protect yourself from toxic people, even if they're related to you.